The security guard didn't flinch when he grabbed her wrist. The receptionist didn't blink when she rolled her eyes and muttered, "Try the used lot down the street." And the manager. Oh, the manager. He stared straight at the black woman in front of him, his voice a blade wrapped in silk. "Ma'am, we don't allow loitering, especially not around $100,000 vehicles." The marble floor of the luxury showroom gleamed under the spotlight. Chandeliers dripped elegance, and in the center of it all stood a woman dressed in old jeans and a faded t-shirt, someone the room had already judged, dismissed, and decided didn't belong. But what no one knew was this. She owned the entire building, every car on that floor, hers. Every paycheck signed in that place came from her hand. The woman they called a threat was the CEO of the entire automotive empire. And what happened next would not only expose a deeply racist culture within her own ranks, it would nearly cost her everything. Because what this woman was about to uncover wasn't just disrespect, it was betrayal. Not just by strangers, but by her own people. And when the system turned against her, she had to prove the unthinkable, that even a black CEO can be disbelieved in her own empire. If you've ever walked into a place and felt like your skin walked in first, this story is for you. If you've ever stayed silent when you should have spoken, or spoken and been punished for it, this story is for you. Hit like, hit share, and hit subscribe. Because what you're about to witness isn't just justice. It's justice done quietly. And those who thought they were in power, they're about to be exposed. Now breathe in, feel the weight of a Honda Civic door closing, and follow her as she walks into the place she built, and is treated like she doesn't exist. The 2015 Honda Civic quietly pulled into the lot of Prestige Motors, where even the California sunlight seemed curated to match the paint of every luxury car on display. Across the lot gleamed a row of blazing red Ferraris. To the left, Bentleys rested under chilled shadows, polished curves, shimmering silver logos, all speaking the same unspoken truth: we're not for the ordinary. And then, amid all that opulence, there she was. A black woman, 42 years old, in a faded gray t-shirt, cuffed jeans, and worn-out sneakers. She remained in the car a few seconds longer, not to hesitate, but to gather herself for what even she hadn't dared to name. Zora Thompson, founder and CEO of the Thompson Automotive Group, the parent company of 12 high-end showrooms across the state. A woman often hailed as a symbol of change in keynote speeches about diversity and female leadership. One who once sat at roundtables with powerful white male CEOs, in boardrooms where the leather chairs smelled of power. And today, she sat here, in the form of a regular customer. No jewelry, no assistant, no prior appointment. Just a woman visiting the showroom she quietly acquired 2 months ago. Not to audit the sales, but to verify the rumors. The persistent whispers that customers of color were ignored, that those who dressed modestly were directed to the used car lot, that a guard once removed a young mother because her child touched a display car. No formal complaints, no official reports, just quiet messages, nervous glances from those who walked out and never came back. Zora didn't believe in rumors, but she believed in instinct. And today, she would test the very system she once took pride in, not by using her power, but by erasing it. She inhaled, shut off the engine, opened the door. The sound of her sneakers touching the pavement was soft, almost like a greeting. No one knew who she was, and that was the point. The glass door beeped gently as it opened, as if even it were unsure about who just walked in. Zora stood inside a space of light, glass and marble, where every detail was engineered to make guests feel as if they were entering a temple of luxury. But not her. She didn't feel welcomed. She didn't feel seen. 3 salesmen were scattered across the showroom, shirts crisply ironed, ties properly knotted, their movements choreographed like a silent play. They were engaged with 2 pairs of clients, all white, all dressed like they had stepped out of a finance drama. Laughter, pens clicking, sparkling water being poured. Zora stood there for 30 seconds. No one approached. 1 minute and 15. A man walked past, made brief eye contact, then immediately looked away. 3 minutes and 17 seconds. And she started to understand why the whispers all sounded the same. She walked up to the reception desk, sleek black marble. Behind it, a perfectly made-up blonde, nude nail polish. Expensive watch resting on her wrist. She was typing something, not looking up. Zora waited. Silent. Like an HR assessment she had never written. Only when Zora gently cleared her throat did the receptionist look up with a gaze caught somewhere between busy and bothered. "What do you need? No good afternoon. No welcome to prestige. Not even a polite smile." Zora kept her voice calm. "I'd like to see a few luxury sedans." The woman glanced at Zora's clothes, the faded sneakers, the worn jeans, the beige canvas bag with no brand. Her expression shifted subtly, but enough for Zora to catch it. A judgment had been passed. A silent verdict signed. "The cheapest car here is 40 grand, she said flatly. "The used lot is out back. You might have better luck there." Zora didn't respond immediately. She simply held the woman's gaze. Not with anger, not with sarcasm. Just silence. A silence so still, it made the air stop for a moment. She nodded. Didn't walk away. Just stood there as if waiting for someone to admit the truth they couldn't say aloud. Zora didn't head to the back like she was told. She remained in place. Her eyes still fixed on that perfectly contoured face, not confrontational, not submissive, just insistent. Insisting that the woman feel what she had just done. The receptionist tapped her fingers on the counter, then looked away, satisfied the moment had passed. Zora gave a soft smile, one that didn't reach her lips, but settled quietly at the edge of her jaw. She walked on, slowly, past the main display line, a black graphite BMW, a limited edition 4-door Audi, a chrome-wrapped Jaguar positioned like a shrine centerpiece. Each car was part of the fleet her company had imported. And yet, the salespeople's eyes slid past her like she was nothing but air. No one approached. No brochures were offered. No names asked. No, "Can I help you?" Zora reached out and gently touched the handle of a smoky gray sedan. She didn't plan to open it. Just to touch a quiet test to locate the invisible line this showroom had drawn around her. From afar, a salesman noticed. He didn't move closer. He just frowned slightly, glanced at his colleague, then shook his head, as if to say, "Who let her touch that?" Zora withdrew her hand, not out of fear, but because she had confirmed something. Here, people like her were allowed to look, and only from a distance. She turned, heading back toward the glass doors, and then a voice rang out behind her, sharp, commanding, used to being obeyed. "What's going on here?" Zora turned, and she knew the real game was just beginning. She stepped deeper into the showroom. The space was immaculate perfection, sculpted into architecture, marble floors, reflecting the lights like emotionless faces. Luxury cars spaced with visual precision. The faint scent of fresh leather and Italian cologne breathing through the room like it shared lungs with the elite. And yet, within all that meticulous design, Zora was the one thing that didn't belong. A salesman brushed past, scanning her from head to toe without so much as a break in stride. Another leaned against a Porsche, whispered something to a colleague, and both chuckled. No words needed, their eyes had already said everything. Zora approached the luxury sedan section. She didn't speak. She didn't touch. She just stood there, and that alone was enough to make 2 staff members glance her way, as if she had stumbled into a VIP zone meant only for the pre-qualified. Then a woman's voice rose behind her. "Are you looking for the recruitment office?" Zora turned. A young woman with platinum blonde hair in company uniform stood there. Her tone wasn't overtly hostile, but it carried no courtesy either, as if the only reason a black woman in casual clothes would be here was to look for a job. Zora answered softly, "No, I'm here to look at cars." The woman raised an eyebrow, nodded the kind of nod that says, "I don't believe you, but I also don't care to engage further. Cars here start at $40,000. You know that, right?" Zora didn't respond. She simply looked at the young woman as if through a pane of glass. She saw it all: the bias, the miseducation, the conditioned reflexes shaped since internship days. She looked, but she said nothing. Because Zora knew sometimes, the way people don't see you says more than anything they could say. "Ma'am, is there anything I can help you with?" A male voice, now warm, clear, well-trained in corporate hospitality. Zora turned. Brad Wilson was walking toward her, fingers laced at his waist, his gray suit tailored to perfection, Italian silk tie with just enough red to outshine every car in the room. Brad had no idea who she was, and that was exactly what she needed. Zora nodded, voice soft as breath. "I'd like to see a few luxury sedan models." Brad's expression didn't shift, but his eyes blinked, the subtle reflex of someone hearing something out of pattern. He nodded, smiling the way a stockbroker might smile at a high schooler asking about hedge funds. "Of course, but those models are reserved for clients who've passed financial pre-qualification. You understand." Zora didn't flinch, didn't look surprised. She simply replied, "I just want to look. No test drive. No purchase today. Just look." Brad smiled, that professional kind of smile, practiced to diminish without sounding disrespectful. "We're always happy to assist serious customers, but per policy, we prioritize clients with verified financial documents first." Every word wrapped in velvet, but Zora heard the barbed wire inside. Serious, verified, prioritize. She glanced around. A white man had just walked in khaki pants, polo shirt, a sports watch. He was being offered water, handed a brochure, and led straight to the main display. No one asked if he brought a bank statement. Zora turned back to Brad. "You're right. The process is very clear." Brad nodded, assuming she now understood. But he didn't realize it was she who was taking mental notes, not to react, but to prepare. A retaliation that needed no words. Brad took half a step back, eyes fixed on Zora, reassessing the threat level she posed. A woman in a faded t-shirt, not raising her voice, not touching the cars, doing absolutely nothing, and yet still triggering his instinct to manage the situation. He glanced at the front security desk near the entrance. Just a slight nod. No words needed. Tom, the afternoon guard, immediately left his post, walking toward Zora with the quiet authority of someone who had done this many times. Zora didn't turn around. She looked Brad straight in the eyes and asked calmly, "What are you doing?" Brad shrugged, still smiling, but his eyes were sharper now. "You're making the staff uncomfortable. I'm within my rights to ask you to leave if I feel there's a potential risk to our working environment." Zora laughed silently. Risk, a word so often used as a cloak for unnamed exclusion. Tom reached her. Tall, muscular, wearing black gloves. Not the kind of security who nods at guests. The kind trained to resolve situations. "Ma'am, I need you to step outside," Tom said. His voice wasn't loud, but his body leaned in, his hand nearly brushing her shoulder. Zora looked at the gloved hand. She didn't step back, but she didn't move forward either. "I haven't caused a disturbance. I'm standing quietly and asking for information." "We're not debating," Brad interjected. "It's best if you leave before this escalates." Every eye in the showroom was now on her. No one spoke. No one intervened. Some customers pretended to read price sheets. Others sneakily pulled out their phones. Zora nodded slowly, then turned to Tom. "Don't touch me. I'll walk on my own." She turned, walked away, the soles of her sneakers tapping against the marble like punctuation at the end of an indictment. She reached the glass doors, pressed her hand to open them. But just before she stepped out, Zora stopped. She didn't turn back. She simply tilted her head just enough for her words to reach the ears behind her. "You'll remember this moment." And then she walked out. No one dared to stop her. No one dared to breathe. Zora closed the car door with a motion so light it was nearly invisible. No sound was louder than her own breath. The Honda Civic sat dwarfed among six-figure cars, shaded beneath the glass awning. Yet inside its cabin, a ray of sunlight still streamed through the windshield, warming her neck hot, but not the kind of heat that burned. The burn came from memory. Every word that was said, every glance, every professional nod used to dismiss her like a threat, all of it still played before her eyes, crisp and clear like a recording on an unseen screen. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't slam the steering wheel. Zora had stood in rooms filled with white men in tailored navy suits, staring at her like she was invited by mistake. She'd walked on stages where the announcer got her title wrong, assumed she was her own assistant. She'd seen the disbelief each time she said, "I'm the founder." But never had she been thrown out of the very empire she built. Zora stared through the windshield. Prestige Motors stood just ahead, sleek, quiet, self-assured. No one inside knew she was still there, less than 20 meters away, her hand resting on the wheel of the same Civic she had bought with savings at age 26. She unlocked her phone. Calm. Precise. Accessed the internal app. Selected Request Security Footage Retrieval. Truth required evidence. And if the system she designed was working as intended, every act of discrimination from the past 30 minutes had been recorded. Zora began entering the parameters. 10:15 a.m., 10:45 a.m. Freiners, reception lobby, Prestige Motors. Her finger glided smoothly. But a tremor started deep inside a whisper. What if the system isn't on her side either? She submitted the request. The system acknowledged it. Request sent to Security Control, Zone 3B, Prestige Motors. Everything followed protocol. The very protocol she created, transparent, swift, and without friction. She leaned back and closed her eyes. In just a few minutes, the evidence would arrive. A simple clip, a quiet extract, all she needed to expose the truth. A notification tone broke the silence. Zora opened her eyes, checked the internal message. The first line struck like a slap. Sorry, no camera data available for the requested time frame. Her brow furrowed. She typed, why this is a Tier A showroom. Cameras were upgraded 3 months ago. A minute later, a reply came. Tech team is investigating. There was a reported transmission issue this morning in Cluster 3B. Data currently unavailable. Currently unavailable. Transmission issue. Temporarily inaccessible. Words she had heard before, but never used to hide something that happened to her. Zora inhaled. Not deeply, just enough to hold on to clarity. She didn't respond. Didn't escalate. She simply stared at the message as if looking into the eyes of someone lying, without blinking. Camera failure. The exact morning she dropped in unannounced. Camera failure. For the exact 30 minutes she was humiliated, expelled, touched like a trespasser. She remembered Brad hadn't flinched. Jessica didn't hesitate. Tom approached like it had been prearranged. An unwritten plan. A playbook used before. But this time, they used it on the person who wrote the rules. Zora tilted her head slightly, no smile. Only a silent thought. No footage good? I don't have to pretend to trust the system anymore? Her phone buzzed again. Not a call. Not a personal message. A system alert, the kind triggered only by emergency emails, flagged high risk. Executive tier. Zora tapped it open. Sender Bradley Wilson, title, General Sales Manager, Prestige Motors. Subject, urgent suspicious incident, involving unverified executive imposter. Zora tightened her grip on the phone, but her face stayed still. She began reading line by line, every word carefully chosen, like Brad had drafted it in advance. This morning, an unidentified female individual entered the luxury showroom area claiming affiliation with the executive board and refused to verify her identity or financial credentials when asked. Staff were forced to ask the individual to leave the premises in order to maintain safety and professional standards. I'm reporting this to prevent any potential impersonation that could impact brand reputation or client trust. Zora read it twice, not because she didn't understand, but to fully absorb the fact that, for the first time in her life, she had been framed as an intruder, in a place she owned. She had been underestimated, she had been overlooked, but never had her own system accused her of not belonging. And the most bitter part, Brad's email was cold, polished, and strategically crafted to destroy her credibility from within. Zora opened the Executive Control app, scrolled to the bottom of the Security tab. Her finger hovered over a red square. Activate Protocol 7. No sound, no animation. Just a small text field appeared. Reason for activation. She typed falsified report, misrepresentation of executive identity, signs of internal collusion, systemic exclusion behavior. Then tapped send. It took 1 second, but the impact would be felt from the showroom floor to the top of the building's nameplate. Zora set her phone on the passenger seat. Outside, a new group of customers walked into the showroom. She watched them, not with the eyes of someone just ejected, but with the calm, certain gaze of someone who would return without needing to knock. Zora remained in the car. The door was still closed. The engine hadn't started. She wasn't in a hurry to leave. When a tremor erupts inside you, you can't just drive away as if nothing happened. She looked through the windshield toward the showroom, small figures moving inside a brightly lit space. A sales rep stood with his head bowed before an elderly white man. A car was being unveiled, prepped for delivery to its new owner. Everything was unfolding according to protocol. So precise, it felt hollow. Then, Zora saw something that knocked the air from her lungs just one beat off. A black man's simple shirt, khaki pants walked in holding the hand of a young boy, maybe 6 years old, clutching a plastic toy car. They entered through the main doors, eyes wide with excitement, like they'd just walked into Disneyland. Zora couldn't hear what was said, but she could see everything clearly. The security guard by the entrance. Tom, same angled stance, blocking the way, same black gloves. He stepped toward the father, said something short, then looked at the boy. The child had reached out to touch the door of a silver Jaguar. Tom immediately raised a finger, shook his head, then said something that made both father and son freeze in place. Zora couldn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. She saw the boy's tiny hands slowly retreat, and his eyes redden. Zora didn't look away. She couldn't. The scene held her. The father crouched down, gently resting his hand on the boy's shoulder, whispering something soft. The boy nodded, but his eyes stayed red, still fixed on the shiny silver car, as if touching it might be proof that he, too, belonged in that place. Zora felt her chest tighten, not from anger, but from something else, something distant, dragging itself forward from a time she thought she had long outgrown. A small garage on the corner of a Detroit street, summer 1993. A 9-year-old girl in a red plaid dress, holding a second-hand Hot Wheels car from a flea market. Her father had taken her to the biggest dealership in the neighborhood not to buy, just to let her see. You know, he had said, one day, you'll own a fleet of cars like these. But they hadn't made it 5 steps before a man stepped out, face cold as chrome. This isn't a museum. Keep your kids' hands off the cars. Who's gonna pay if she scratches one? Zora remembered her father falling silent, gently turning her around, guiding her back out. She didn't cry, but she withdrew her hand just like the boy had, and in that quiet recoil, a wound began, one that would stretch across 30 years. She never told anyone, not because she forgot, but because she thought she had already answered it with 12 luxury showrooms, with the CEO title, with an empire that bore her name. But now, watching that little boy pull his hand back the same way she once did, Zora realized. Some things, if not stopped, will keep repeating generation after generation. The boy and his father turned away. No argument, no resistance. They simply walked out of the display area just as countless black families had done in silence, when reminded they didn't belong here. Zora still sat in the car, but her mind was no longer still. She didn't just see a father and son exiting a showroom, she saw something larger. A future leaving, a new generation starting to believe my place is outside. And if she let that happen, If she allowed that boy to grow up carrying the same redness in his heart as she once did, then the 12 showrooms, the 500 employees, the speeches, the honorary degrees would mean nothing. Because Zora understood personal success isn't enough. If the system still crushes black children under luxury ceilings, then she had failed. She placed her hand on the steering wheel. Her palm had dried. The trembling was gone. Only one thing remained: clarity. She was not a victim, not anymore an undercover. She was a mother, the leader of an empire, and now a warrior protecting something far greater than her reputation, the right of black children to exist and be respected in spaces like this. Zora buckled her seatbelt. The Civic engine purred to life. She didn't look back, only glanced once in the rearview mirror where the same familiar faces continued running the performance they thought was flawless. "You won't see me coming," Zora whispered, "but you'll know I was here." Then she drove off, not hurried, because those who understand true power don't rush. They arrive when it matters. The sun was at its peak when Zora returned to Prestige Motors, but this time, not in the Civic. A black Range Rover glided into the lot, its wheels seemingly untouched by the pavement, as if the air itself parted to let it through. She stepped out, unhurried. Charcoal gray tailored suit, fastened with a small Z-shaped brooch. Crisp white blouse, low-heeled leather pumps. Her hair tied in a high bun. Her face bare yet radiant, bright enough to force anyone nearby to recalibrate their demeanor. No one inside the showroom recognized her, not right away. And that was exactly what she intended. She passed through the glass doors for the second time that day. But the air inside shifted instantly. Not because she did anything, but because her presence said everything. "I'm not here for your acceptance. I'm here to let you know I'm watching." Jessica, the receptionist from that morning, was adjusting the calendar on her screen. She looked up. The words, "Can I help you?" almost left her lips and then froze. Jessica's eyes flicked. Her lips twitched. She couldn't place this client but the suit, the posture. Everything about this woman said, "Not someone you dismiss." Zora walked straight in. No invitation needed. She stopped at the reception desk, looked directly at the young staffer fumbling with brochures. Her voice was soft as silk, but the words cut clean. "I need to see the regional director. Immediately." May I have your name so I can—" Zora interrupted, no raise in tone, just precision. "Tell him Zora has arrived." In a pause so brief it couldn't be measured in breaths, the room fell silent. Not because the name was familiar, but because it carried something that made people instinctively straighten their backs. The moment her name was spoken, the atmosphere pivoted, not by sound, by instinct. Jessica stepped back, subtly. The staffer at the next desk paused mid-pour with the coffee carafe. A salesman whispered to his colleague, eyes fixed on Zora. That name Zora was not foreign to this system. It needed no full surname, no business card. It had appeared on the founder's wall, in system-wide strategy emails, in the footer of every policy update. It was the bloodstream of the company, and yet they had all forgotten. All but one man, Brad Wilson. He had just walked out from the back after lunch. Saw Zora, now an entirely different figure from the woman in the faded tee that morning, and only frowned slightly. He didn't recognize her. That was the blind spot of men too confident in their assumptions. They knew how to label people, but not how to recognize power. Brad approached, wearing the same smile, professional, polished, with a layer of smug. "Ma'am, I think there was a bit of misunderstanding this morning, but if you're here now—" He didn't get to finish. The glass door behind him swung open. A middle-aged man in a slightly wrinkled suit, collar damp with sweat from rushing, stepped inside. Robert Chen, regional director overseeing 5 luxury showrooms in the network. The same man who once sat beside Zora during a quarterly review. The man who had once said, "I've never seen anyone uphold leadership standards like Zora Thompson." His eyes scanned the room, then landed on Zora standing tall, eyes locked on Brad. In that instant, his face drained of color. His hand froze mid-adjustment of his tie. And his voice, when it came, was soft, shaky, but unmistakably clear. "Miss Thompson." Brad froze, turned to Zora, then back to Robert. His mouth opened as if to ask what, but no sound came. No one spoke. No one moved. Because everyone knew this moment was no longer about this morning. It was about what they chose to do when they thought no one important was watching. "Miss Thompson." Robert's voice cracked like a confession unfinished. Zora didn't respond. She stood still. No smirk. No nod. Her silence was confirmation. Every eye in the showroom turned to Brad. No one looked at Zora like a stranger anymore. They looked at her like a light had come on in a dusty room. Brad turned to Robert. Frantic wait. What did you just call her? His question wasn't really a question. It was confusion giving way to panic. Robert didn't answer. He was trying to stay composed, but his eyes wouldn't meet Zora's again. Brad took half a step back. His eyes narrowed. And in his mind, the pieces began to connect. How she had looked at him that morning unafraid. How she had walked out without protest. How she had just said, "Zora has arrived." Trying to salvage his dignity, Brad laughed hollow, forced. "Hold on. No way. Thompson, who... You know her. She's the one who caused a scene this morning." That line in that exact moment sealed the coffin of Brad Wilson's career. The showroom fell still. Even the ceiling fan seemed to hold its breath. A few employees quietly stepped back as if not to be caught in the blast radius. Robert exhaled, his voice now hoarse. "Brad, that's Zora Thompson, CEO of the entire Thompson Automotive Group. She is the founder." And just like that, Brad's world collapsed on the last 5 words. His mouth opened, then closed. His hand lifted, then dropped. His eyes searched for escape, but no one looked at him as a leader anymore. Zora took a single step forward, not aggressive, not loud. She simply said, "I'm still waiting to see the sedan you said wasn't meant for someone like me." Brad swallowed, had no words. And in that silence, the entire showroom understood. They hadn't just turned away the wrong customer. They had shut the door on the one holding the keys. Zora didn't turn her back on Brad. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough to make everyone in the room silently question what they had seen and what they had failed to see all morning. She walked slowly toward the customer lounge. The room was so quiet, you could hear each heel strike the marble floor steady, composed, unwavering. When she reached the counter, she didn't speak right away. Instead, she opened a small leather wallet, no designer logos, but every stitch hand-sewn with intention. From it, she drew a business card. No embossing, no colors, just 3 lines. Zora Thompson, Chief Executive Officer, Thompson Automotive Group. She placed it on the counter, a gentle motion, yet the soft click sounded like a gavel striking stone. No one dared to touch it. No one said a word. Even Robert simply stared at it as if the card wasn't from a CEO, but a written indictment of a system that had just exposed itself. Brad didn't move. His face had gone rigid, eyes wide, lips mouthing sounds that never became words. Zora lifted her chin, her voice calm and even. "I'm the one you refused to assist. The one asked to leave a place I own. The one security was called on, though I did nothing wrong." No one objected, because there was nothing left to defend. She pointed toward the silver BMW in the corner, the same one she had reached for that morning. "I still want to see it," then turned to Robert. "Is this showroom still open to me, or do I need someone's permission?" No shouting, no legal threats, just the presence of truth spoken in the voice of someone who knows exactly who she is. Robert stood near Zora, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the floor. No one had asked him to remain. Zora hadn't demanded his presence. But he knew at his level, silence was already a statement, and today, he no longer had the privilege of silence. Zora turned slightly. "I want you to stand with me. Not to say anything, just to observe." Robert nodded, with difficulty, but he couldn't say no. Zora looked back at Brad, who was now trying awkwardly to regain his professional tone. My sincerest apologies about this morning's misunderstanding. If you'd like, I can personally show you the car. No, Zora cut in. I don't want to be treated like a CEO. I want to be treated the way you treat every guest, just as you did this morning. Brad stood frozen, his face stiff, like someone had drained the oxygen from the room. His eyes darted around, hoping someone might rescue him, but the entire showroom had come to a standstill. Zora pointed again toward the pale-colored BMW at the far end. That one? Still the model I want to see. Brad walked toward the car. Zora followed. Robert walked beside her. At the display, Brad said nothing at first. Then, as if running out of options, he defaulted to the script. This model is usually reserved for clients with pre-approved verification. Robert held his breath. Zora tilted her head. What did you just say? Brad froze. The exact same sentence, a perfect repetition, not from ignorance but from the belief that he could still decide who was worthy of access. Zora turned to Robert. Do you see, I don't need a disguise. I don't need to hide my name. Even knowing he's being watched, he still acts the same way. Robert said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Brad looked as if he wished he could vanish. His eyes were red, hands buried in his pockets. But remorse couldn't rewrite the truth. And habits, the ones baked into silence, couldn't hide under the gaze of someone fully awake. No one moved. No one repeated Brad's words. No one tried to fix anything. Because everything had already been revealed, no more proof needed, no more statements required. Zora stood at the center of the showroom. Light reflected off the marble beneath her. Her silhouette stretched long, as if reminding everyone that no matter how hard they tried to erase her, she was here, clear, unignorable. She turned to Robert, her voice low, no force, no emphasis, just clarity. I came here as an ordinary person. She looked at Brad not with anger, but with truth. They treated me like I didn't belong. Not because I was wrong, but because they believed they had the right to decide who belongs and who doesn't. No one objected, no coughs, no apologies. Zora gave a slight nod. No bitterness, no pity. I don't need to be welcomed. I only need to be treated like a human being. 3 sentences, 3 layers of meaning. Each word landing like stakes driven into the foundation of a cracking system. Robert bowed his head, not as a personal apology, but as a silent reckoning for a system that had allowed exclusion to flourish in silence. Zora turned away. No applause, no spotlight. Just the breeze from the front door brushing past her as she exited, carrying not rage, but a quiet reminder. Justice doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes, it enters as a presence impossible to deny. An emergency meeting was scheduled for 10:15 a.m. the next morning. Zora received the invite via email, the subject line polite, as usual. Discussion incident at Prestige Motors. Possible conduct violation. She wasn't surprised, and she wasn't offended. This was exactly what she had expected from the moment she read Brad's accusation of impersonation in his incident report. This is how the system works. A complaint is filed, and regardless of who is named, the process must proceed, even if that person is the founder. In the internal document attached, the first line read, "Verification required regarding an incident at Prestige Motors, involving a woman who identified herself as CEO without formal registration, leading to the showroom manager requesting her removal." Zora read every word carefully. No slurs, no open insults, but each sentence quietly positioned her as someone under suspicion. For the first time in years, she, the person who wrote the company's own code of conduct, was being asked to explain her personal behavior. She didn't respond, didn't react. She simply marked the message as read, then reopened a saved message from the night before. Sender customer anonymous account subject. I captured what happened today. Not sure if it helps, but thank you. Attached 1 video file, 3 minutes, 46 seconds. Zora clicked to play. The footage was shaky, angled low clearly from a dashboard camera mounted behind a windshield. But the image was clear enough to show every detail. Her standing at the reception desk, being denied service. Jessica glancing sideways and saying, "These cars aren't for walk-ins." Brad appearing, demanding financial verification. Her hand touching the BMW's handle and the security guard instantly stepping forward. The line "just in case" rang out loud and undeniable. Zora rewound to the final moment, paused where she turned away and said, "You'll remember this moment." She whispered the words again, but this time, not to Brad, to the very system that had dared to question her. 9:32 a.m. Zora uploaded the video to the internal platform. One simple note. Requested evidence. Clip recorded externally by third-party customer. Timestamp verified. No justification, no commentary, no narrative. Less than 40 minutes later, a notification arrived in the board of directors' inbox. Update: preliminary evidence received. Contents under review. Zora returned to her daily work, approved the next quarter's payroll, signed off on routine maintenance contracts. She moved through the day as if no one had tried to erase her yesterday. 11:47 a.m. Her phone buzzed, an internal call from the chairman's office. "Zora, we've just reviewed the footage. It's very clear." The voice on the other end was rough, tentative. "We sincerely apologize. Things shouldn't have gone this far." Zora didn't acknowledge the apology. She simply asked, "When is the new meeting?" 2 p.m. today. The agenda has changed. Now, we need Brad Wilson to answer some questions." His voice dropped. Zora recognized the tone, the sound of a man who had just watched the system's mask fall off, all from a video less than 4 minutes long. Brad had written the report. The system had believed him. And now, that same system would have to decide, keep Brad or keep its integrity. Zora stood. She didn't rehearse for the meeting. The evidence didn't need explanation. It had spoken. And this time, the truth came not from power, but from the camera of someone without power, yet with eyes that saw and a heart that knew. 2:00 p.m., 17th floor conference room. 13 people sat around an 8-meter walnut table. White lights overhead. The smell of polished wood and black coffee. Zora sat at the head. No long introductions. No opening remarks. On the side screen, the dash cam footage played for the third time. No one interrupted. Even those who had previously supported Brad's report now kept their heads down. When the footage ended, Zora asked only one question. Was this accidental or intentional? No answer came, but every eye turned to Brad. He sat at the far end of the table, leaning back, sweat gathering at his collar despite the AC set to 70 degrees. His so-called professional process lay shattered like glass around him. Zora didn't lecture, didn't humiliate. She simply asked, "Who among you read Brad's report and never verified it?" Several heads nodded, slowly, heavily. The chairman held the internal report in hand. His voice no longer tried to sound diplomatic. "We've confirmed Brad Wilson not only falsified key parts of the incident at Prestige Motors, but also attempted to manipulate internal emails to conceal a similar incident involving another black customer last week. System time logs show he edited his report after learning he'd been recorded." No one needed further explanation. "Brad Wilson, your termination is effective immediately." Brad stood, no one saw him off, no one spoke up. Only the sound of a chair scraping the floor, and the echo of footsteps in a long hallway like a slow toll for someone who thought consequences would never come. After the meeting, Zora returned to her office. On her screen, a draft still sat open. Letter of resignation, draft. She looked at it, for a moment, then, without hesitation, pressed delete. No one would ever know she had once considered leaving. No one needed to. Because those who truly hold power do not retreat from battlefields, especially when the weak have already begun digging their own graves. The following week, Prestige Motors became the first location in the Thompson Automotive Group network to be labeled under internal culture recalibration. Not as a warning to customers, but as a reminder to employees. There is nothing more dangerous than the habits we've grown used to. Zora held no press conference, no media statement. She appeared only once in a private meeting room with over 40 staff from the branch receptionists, security guards, financial advisors. No podium, No microphone. She stood in the center of the room and spoke in a tone that wasn't loud, but no one could ignore. I'm not here to ask you to apologize. I'm here to make sure what happened to me never happens to someone else, even if that someone isn't me. No one spoke, but everyone listened, not out of fear of losing their jobs, but because they understood something had shifted. It was time to either move forward or be left behind. Zora announced the first wave of changes. The entire showroom would now follow a blind walk-in protocol. Every guest would be served in the order they arrived, regardless of appearance or attire. All security and front desk staff would be retrained by an independent, non-affiliated consultancy. A new anonymous internal reporting system would be implemented, allowing employees to report discriminatory behavior, overt or subtle, without fear. Most importantly, a pilot program was launched. The Black Customer Circle, composed of individuals who had once been excluded, now invited to return as consultants to advise the very people who had once turned them away. Zora didn't call it reform. She simply said, "We don't need to demolish the building. We just need to rebuild the bricks that rotted quietly over time." She had recognized Jennifer's face in the dashcam footage just a few seconds before her car approached the glass doors. A black woman in a navy blue blouse, inquiring about a coupe dismissed with a simple headshake and no explanation. Jennifer hadn't raised her voice. She had simply paused, then walked away. No one had apologized. No one remembered her. But Zora hadn't forgotten. A week later, Zora found Jennifer's profile through the system's list of unfinished customer interactions. She called without introducing her title. She simply said, "I'd like to meet with you. Not about the car. About how we welcomed you that day." They met at a small cafe by the river. Jennifer arrived on time, but her eyes held a quiet hesitation, the wariness of someone who'd once been told she was too sensitive for calling out discrimination. Zora smiled. No explanations, no justifications. She handed Jennifer a small, plainly wrapped box. Inside, the keys to the coupe she was once denied, a handwritten letter, and at the bottom a sealed envelope labeled, "Consultant Invite, Thompson Equity Counsel." Zora spoke slowly. "This isn't a gift of apology. It's a certificate that those once silenced are now the ones we listen to." Jennifer's eyes welled, but she didn't cry. She simply nodded and whispered, "Thank you for coming back." Zora gently clasped her hand. "I didn't just come back for you. I came back for the little girl who'll walk into that showroom 10 years from now and be offered a drink, not shown the door." Outside the cafe, the late afternoon light fell across Jennifer's hair. Soft, clear, not blinding. Zora knew she couldn't change everything. But today, she had healed a fragment of memory the system had once scarred. 6 weeks later, a still Wednesday morning, Zora returned to Prestige Motors. No announcement, no entourage, no heels, no CEO wardrobe. Just a black woman in a white linen blouse, dark jeans, slip-ons, and hair gently down. She parked at the farthest corner of the lot. Didn't go in immediately, just watched. A black boy walked in with his mother, maybe 8 years old. No one stopped them. No one asked if they had an appointment. A young white male employee, in showroom uniform, approached smiling, nodding, and gracefully invited them toward the SUV in the center display. There was no, "Are you financially qualified?" No. "Let's not let him touch the high-value models." None of that. Just normal. And sometimes, normal is how justice speaks most completely. Zora stepped out of her car, paper coffee cup in hand. She walked past the glass doors. No one noticed her. She didn't stop. Just for a moment, she turned her head. The boy was sitting inside the vehicle, hands on the wheel, grinning wide. His mother was snapping pictures on her phone. Zora smiled. Not with satisfaction, but because the moment had arrived when they could walk in freely, without anyone needing to open the door for them. She turned away, left no message, asked for no credit. Because the greatest victory of a builder is not being remembered by name, but seeing the system they once had to fight finally begin to welcome those who come after. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher, one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.